Welcome to another episode of the STR Sisterhood. I'm your host, Stacy St, and I am so excited to have some time together with you today. Thanks for inviting me into your day. Now, before we jump into this episode, you know it, girl. I'm going to share a quote that I recently read that resonated with me. And it says, "You just have to work at finding your way to stay grounded. And a lot of times that's by saying no." What wonderful words of wisdom coming to us from actress Sandra Oh. Now, in this episode, we are sitting down with Christina McNatt, and we cover so many juicy topics from building out backyards to adding bedrooms to working with your spouse and everything in between. I can't wait for you to meet her. So without further ado, let's dive into my conversation with Christina. So today we are joined by Christina McNatt, and we are going to deep dive into so many aspects of her journey. But first, Christina, I just want to say thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm excited to be here.
So before we jump into the long list of questions I have for you, let's start off and have you share with our listeners and viewers a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Sure. So my name is Christina. I am in the Florida market. I, alongside my husband, are realtors with the short-term shop under Avery Carl's team, which has been fantastic. We are investors. We have 5 properties, short-term rentals in our portfolio, and we manage another 15, so 16. Actually, we have 21 in our total portfolio. We did just over $2.5 million gross revenue in 2024.
Go, girl.
Yeah. So a lot of our houses that we have are bigger single family houses with pools. That's what we find really works here. Mm-hmm. I'm a mom for, I have a 4-year-old son. He keeps me on my toes for sure. We got into the real estate market probably 15 years ago doing long-term. So
how did you, sorry to interrupt you. How did you pivot into the short-term rental space then?
So, when we were in long-term, we were making maybe like $100 a month. And we were like, okay. But we're like, well, when do we get to quit our W-2s? What, is this real? We're going to have, tons of houses before this happens. So we kind of shifted and we bought a duplex, and it was still long-term. And we quickly realized that we lived in one side of the duplex. So we kind of did some house hacking. And we realized, okay, now we're kind of onto something because now we're making $1,000 a month, And so our exit strategy on that was to move and get us a single family house and rent both sides of the duplex and make another $1,000. So we happened to find this house that was a mother-in-law suite. It was a single family house with a mother-in-law suite attached. And there was a pool in the backyard. So we lived in the main house and we were going to just have an annual rental in the mother-in-law suite. And I kept thinking, I don't really want somebody in my backyard the whole time if they want to enjoy the pool or something, have someone living there the whole time because we were on site. So I convinced my husband, John, to do a short-term rental. So it's little 600 square foot mother-in-law suite, and you couldn't get into the house to the mother-in-law suite. You had to go outside. So, I didn't feel weird about it or anything. So once we started renting that, I talked John into it. And that was paying our full house mortgage plus about $2,000 a month. So I was like, okay, we are onto something now. So, and it was kind of cool because, people were coming from all over the world. At that house, we were in Sarasota. And so people were coming to Siesta Key, coming to Sarasota. And we got to meet people from Germany and Ireland and everywhere around the world. And we're like, God, if we're really onto something, this market could really be fantastic. And this time it was about 8 years ago. So, yes, short-term rentals were known then, but not like they are now. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So we lived there for probably 2 years, and we found another property that was in Bradenton, and it was a duplex. And so we kind of did the same thing. We moved into that one. We rented our Sarasota house as a whole. Mind you, this was in 2020, so right as the world was shutting down. We bought a duplex. We lived in one side, and we fixed them both up, and we added a pool to each side of the duplex. Wow. We sold our long terms, we sold the original duplex. It wasn't in an area where you would short term rent it. So we basically sold off all of our long terms and pivoted to short terms. So that was kind of how we got started. And, John was able to leave his W-2 in 2020, and I left my W-2 in 2023.
I love it. I love it. So good. So good. And you've never looked back?
No, never. I mean, yes. Okay. I say like Sundays we're like, sell it all, like just sell it all and just be done. Not that we're going to go back to a normal 9 to 5, but some days you have those days.
Well, and it's reality. There are days where, things come at you from all angles and it's like, holy moly, this is a lot when you have especially a larger portfolio, right? I always share with my coaching students inside of our accelerator program that as you grow your portfolio, you run into new glass ceilings, right? Managing 5 properties is not like managing 1. Managing 15 properties is not like managing 5. Managing, 35 is not like managing 15. So you always experience, I think, challenges as you get larger. But I think it's so important to have systems, structure, the right people around you so that you can grow smartly, right? What are your thoughts?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think so too. We kind of grew in a weird way for our hosting side of things because it wasn't anything that we ever went after. I just happened to have relationships with people that had short-term rentals here with big property managers. And they were like, Christina, you're doing so well with your properties and we love you. Like, would you guys manage our house? And so we ended up getting these houses to manage with those systems in place. So we kind of did the opposite of what you would traditionally do. So we had to learn quick how to do everything. And we relied a lot on the STR communities for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, I want to ask you some questions. So you identified obviously a niche. Hey, when these properties have pools in South Florida, they do really well. And I know from seeing your portfolio, like you create absolutely stunning properties. And I know that you have a knack for taking a property that isn't doing so well and turning it into a cash cow. So I want to dive into that a little bit and talk about, first of all, when you look at a property, whether it's a property that maybe a co-hosting client or maybe even one to purchase, what are the things that you're looking for to assess, is this a property that could potentially fit within my portfolio?
Yeah, so our big thing here is, we're in Florida, we're by the beaches, we're close to Anna Maria Islands on the Gulf Coast, West Gulf Coast. So the outside space, the backyard, is probably the biggest amenity that you can have. So we look for houses, 1/4 acre or larger, or close to that size. We tend to try to look for a 4-bedroom or larger just because the revenue, speaks a lot more to a 4-bedroom. Or we'll try to look for a 3-bedroom with a bigger square footage that can be built into a 4-bedroom. So we just did a project last year where we went live for a whole year before building out our backyard. So I can kind of talk a little bit about that when we get to it. But it was interesting because our other properties that do have pickleball, they started with all of those amenities. So we don't have true numbers to look back and say, okay, what would this exact house do with it versus without? So yeah. Mm-hmm. So mainly bigger houses do well here. You have to have a pool. It gets really, really hot in the summer. So if you don't have a pool here, you are not booking in the summertime.
Yeah. Yeah. And so let's talk about that property that you just mentioned that was live for a year before you built out the backyard. Talk to us about the reasoning behind that. What was the why? So we have a couple other properties in our portfolio that had pickleball that were doing really good. So we have a 3-bedroom in our portfolio that was outdoing our personal 4-bedroom that didn't have pickleball. And we're like, okay, like if this 3-bedroom can do it, what can we do with a 4-bedroom? And we had a bigger yard to kind of build out the backyard. So it was like, well, it would have to at least do the same. We weren't sure. Well, honestly, we're like, okay, like there's not really any other ones at that time. There wasn't that many. There was maybe 3 or 4 here that had pickleball. Mm-hmm.
So based on that, we're like, man, this 3-bedroom's crushing. And if we could do that with a 4-bedroom or a 5-bedroom, then that's what we'll just keep doing. So we had just launched in 2023, like the last few days of December. And we kind of had the vision before that, but we were coming in season. So our heavy season here is traditionally like Thanksgiving to Easter. Okay. So we went live at the end of December. We're like, well, we don't want to miss season, blocking off our calendar for the build out. So our slowest time is September, October. So we blocked off those dates for September, October. We went live with the property. We thought, we're doing pretty good. So for 2024, before the build out, our gross revenue was $112,000. So we're like, okay, that's good. But that 3-bedroom that I was telling you about did 156.
Wow.
So we're like, okay, well, we could at least bring in that number. We would be happy.
Right.
So John, my husband, has an engineering background. So he is pretty detailed. So he built out this whole plan. And we blocked up the calendar and we executed it. I mean, we built out, we started with removing the trees and, removing the pool cage, just because here in Florida, I think in Sodos, the pool cages do not look good.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll get questions sometimes like, what is the thing around the pool? What does that do? And I'm like, well, other than maybe keep out insects, maybe it really doesn't do much.
I was wondering if it's an alligator thing. I've always wondered this. So
we get those questions.
I'm going to go squirrel for a hot minute. I mean, forever I thought, well, they must keep out alligators because everybody has them.
Yeah.
Right?
No, it's funny. I've probably only seen alligator a few times here in the wild. Like if you go to like a state park or something,
sure,
where they're known like, hey, this is where the alligators hang out. But unless you're on some body of water that's not the Gulf, like you really don't see them. And you will see crazy news about Florida, and you will see alligators in a pool on the news, maybe, randomly, but I've never seen it here. So it's mainly to keep out bugs.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
But the no-see-ums still get through them.
The no-see-ums will still get through. So, and those are the worst. Those are worse to me than mosquitoes. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to go squirrel again, but I took a trip to Tarpon Springs, Clearwater one year.
That's close to her. Okay.
Yeah. And I never even heard of no-see-ums. And I mean, I was eaten alive. Like, what's going on right now? And I was itchy. And it wasn't until that experience that I started Googling and it's crazy. Is there anything you can do to keep them away?
I don't really think so. I mean, there's some like candles, like the citronella candles, but I don't know that they help. They eat me alive too. Every time I go. Yeah. Especially at nighttime, I feel like they're bad.
I mean, you're just getting it real right here on the STR Sisterhood. We're going to talk about short-term rentals, but we're also talking about bugs. Okay.
That's right.
Okay. So the 3-bedroom with the pickleball was obviously significantly outperforming the 4-bedroom. You blocked September and October. Yep. I want to ask you about the process of actually building out that backyard. Yeah. Because a lot of people, I think, have this intrigue about putting in a pickleball court, but not sure how to execute that. So talk to us about that process.
Yeah, so it's a lot of work because there's things kind of that you don't think of. So basically, the first thing we did was remove the trees and the pool cage. So, after that, we had a lot of like site prep. So there was like some grading, some drainage. We started right away with pouring the concrete for the pickleball court because most people don't know this, but the concrete has to cure for 30 days. So that is like the first thing that you really need to do is like figure out your schedule, make sure it aligns with the concrete people, and make sure that it's going to happen during those 2 months of when you have your time period blocked off. So we did that. We did some drainage stuff to reroute the water from the backyard to the front yard or to the street, whatever, to where it would make sense. We poured the concrete right away. See what was next. Oh, we extended our pool patio. So once we removed the pool cage, We poured some concrete around the pool patio when we did the pickleball. We extended it about 3 feet each way, just so we had more room for like lounge chairs and stuff like that. So we did that. Once we did that, we built a mini putt course. We didn't, sometimes you'll see in Florida when they just have like one little putting green. Well, this one was a bigger one. It was 4. There was some landscaping involved. We did that, and then we did 1,500 square feet of artificial turf. So I think that was really a game changer, because in the photos, it looks so bright and so green, it really made a difference. And especially, I have to show you, and I probably did, or you may have seen it, the before and after picture of the yard with.
I don't think I saw the before. I've seen the after, which is just absolutely drop dead gorgeous, right? And I do agree that artificial turf makes a huge difference in the brightness of the yard. And plus, hello, you don't have to mow.
Exactly. And I was worried, it was funny because we kind of stayed there during those 2 months and kind of oversaw the project. We were very hands-on. But I was worried about the dogs. And we have 2 dogs. We have 2 labs. And I was like, I don't think they're even going to go in the grass. They loved it. They were like, they would like roll over on their back and itch the back and love it. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay, we should have done this before. I always kind of laugh because there's certain things I will fight John on. Like she wanted to remove the trees. I was like, I don't want to remove the tree. Like when we bought the house, there was this amazing tree. Little John climbed the tree when we were here looking at the house. He's like, tree's gone. And I'm like, okay, fine. And now I'm like, why didn't we do that? Why didn't we start with that? Why didn't we remove the tree to begin with?
That's so funny.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
I also want to ask you, if you don't mind sharing, and I'm sure that this varies in different markets, but if someone is looking at potentially installing a pickleball court, budget range wise, what do you feel like is a smart thing for them to carve out?
So it's interesting because, before we built out this one, we already had 2 or 3 other pickleball courts. And I will tell you that this pickleball court that we just built, we built it for the cheapest that we've ever done. It was about $14,000.
Wow.
That was including the concrete, everything that we needed to do, with the concrete and then the paint.
And so just highlighting the fact that that concrete has to cure for 30 days. Is that before you paint it?
Yeah. So I had to cure for 30 days and then we had to get it painted. So basically, in the process, that was one of the first things we did. Then we did the turf. We extended the patio. We did the landscaping. We added like landscaping lighting. We added a bunch of palm trees. We sealed the fence so it just looked cleaner.
Yeah.
Things like that. Yeah. And then painted it.
And so did you work with several contractors to bring this backyard to life? Was there someone in charge, a landscape architect? What did that look like from a partner perspective?
Yeah. In this aspect, it was really my husband, John, just because there were a lot of moving parts. So, if you're buying here, you would need somebody to do that. Or, we'll guide you. And, with the short-term shop, it's kind of cool because if you buy with us at the short-term shop, you get a list of all of our vendors. So, which is really cool. So, yeah. So my husband, John, basically oversaw the whole project because there was landscape people, there was the artificial turf person, concrete painters. We did a big child's playhouse and that had to come and they had to build that. So the company that we bought the playhouse from came and actually built that, which was nice. I think it took them about 2.5 days to get it built.
Wow.
So that was something I wouldn't expect. I'm like, oh,
great.
Drop it off. Set it up. Right.
And so this is going to sound like a silly question, but are there dedicated contractors specifically for pickleball? Is that like Pickleball or us?
No, it's not, but there are. So what we did learn is there are specific painters. So the painter that we used, her background was really tennis courts. And now with the new pickleball, she's kind of moving more into that pickleball space. But there is such a thing as, painting, the specific painter. So, so it's been huge just learning over the past 2 or 3 years as these have been being built out. And, since we are here local, we tend to shop around. And so, it's been cool to see like the prices go down in that aspect and getting it built out for cheaper. So that was nice for sure.
So talk to us a little bit about once that backyard was built, how did that impact your bookings, your rates, your revenue? What did that look like on the back end?
Yeah. So in 2024, I think I told you we were at 112 or 113,000 for the year. Currently, bookings so far for 2025, we're at 138,000.
And we're recording this in early March. Yeah. Girl, that is amazing.
Yeah. So we had 2 months that went 100% occupancy. So February was 100% and April is 100%. I think June was like 80%. So basically, our revenue from January to February, the end of February, because I can't speak of March, what's going to happen in March yet, but 2024 revenue for January through February was 18,000. And January through February 2025, we're at 40,000. So
wow,
200% return basically.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So we figured, I added everything up and we were probably building out everything that we did was between 65 and maybe 70. So, we're hoping that we would make that up.
You're going to make that back your first year.
Yeah. So
that's so great. That's so great. So, now, I'm also curious what your neighbors think. Is this in an area where there are houses close by? Have people been curious? Have they been okay? Talk to us about that.
They've been okay. The one house that we just built out, there is another short-term rental behind us. We've never heard anything from those neighbors of the one that we just built out. We do have another pickleball at one of the other houses, and it's in like right along the fence line. And it was actually one of the houses that we lived in. So we're very close with our neighbors. And they called us one night. We're like, we don't mind a pickleball, but sometimes the guest will hit the ball over and then they want to come and get the ball. And we're not okay with them, obviously, going to get the ball. Right. So we ended up putting like a big net on top of the fence so that it won't go over anymore. Mm-hmm. So, but we've never heard, I was a little worried about that. We haven't had any complaints about the noise. I mean, I think a lot of the people that come here are families with kids. I think they're mainly doing it in the day when people are out or working or at the beach. So we haven't had complaints because I was a little worried about that too.
That's so fun. I love it. Now, I haven't asked you at all about the interior. Obviously often in the short-term rental space, we know that interior design can also make an impact. How do you decide when you're going into a property, hey, I want to focus this much attention and budget on the inside versus the outside? Do you have a specific formula that you use or?
We don't. Our thing is kind of, it is more about the backyard. I mean, obviously you want things to be clean and, bright and fun. People that are spending, anywhere between $700 and $1,000 a night, they have nice places at home. Mm-hmm. So they want it to be, I would say they're coming to Florida. They want it to be different than their house at home. Mm-hmm. So we've done bright colors. We've done fun, funky wallpapers. Basically make it look like Florida, make it look like they're on vacation. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of funny because we built this out in September and October, like I mentioned. And when I was at your live-in retreat in August, I was building this out. And so I'd asked Paige and Kim Fitzpatrick, will you guys just look at this pickleball court? Do you think I'm crazy? Because most of the colors of pickleball courts here are like the reds and the blues. I picked like this neon green. And I was like, is this going to work? What do you guys think? I'm a little nervous, but I want to do bright because in the house, it's all bright, Mm-hmm. And they're like, go for it. So I was excited. I went for it. I was like, okay, I'm making this decision right now while we're here. And I went for it. And so pretty excited.
I love it. Stepping up and making bold decisions. I love it. And I want to ask you about that too, because for me, I find, since I always share with people, I'm a recovering perfectionist, right? It is very easy for me to overthink or delay a decision because I want it to be perfect and I want the decision to be right. for me, it is so incredibly helpful to get perspective from other people, right? I'm curious, was it helpful for you to be surrounded by obviously one of the top designers in our industry
Yes.
and top, launchers or installers in our industry? How did that impact your ability to make a confident decision?
Well, speaking with them and just everybody at your retreat that I went to, they're like the top people in their field, right? So, you have these thoughts of like, can I do this? Can I? And so like having them kind of back up like, hey, this is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Like you need to be confident in doing it. So it was awesome to hear, and especially design with both of them, Yeah. So that was very cool.
That's so cool. So I'm curious, when future potential clients come to you, will it be a requirement for you to build out the backyard? How does this fit into your co-hosting model in the future?
So it's interesting because obviously everybody's goals are different, so like we get that in the hosting side too. We're not going to tell you what to do, but we're going to share our knowledge. Like, hey, if you want to really, really do it well, this is what we did. Here's our numbers. Obviously, you're not us. We don't know that you're going to do that specific number, but it can be done. Mm-hmm. This is what you could do. Mm-hmm. So, we share that. But I mean, there are properties here that are cash flowing or that can cash flow. I mean, 100,000 or 115,000. That probably would have cash flowed depending on the price that you paid for the house. So that was also a 3-bedroom that we easily converted to a 4-bedroom. So so it really just depends, I think on what their goals are. Are they wanting to cash flow? Or are they just wanting it for the tax benefit? Yeah. Most of my buyers are cash flow. So, but then you get people that I wouldn't say don't listen, but they're like, oh, well, I did this design and that will work. And we're like, okay, but you can make your money back.
It could be so much better.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk through the process a little bit of taking a 3-bedroom into a 4-bedroom. For someone who may be watching or listening and they like the thought of that, but don't know what the logistics are behind that. Talk to me about how you decide where to put that 4th bedroom, the types of things that you're looking at. What is that process like on your end?
Yeah. So when I'm out looking at houses, like my day is usually I'm out looking at houses and I'm taking videos and sending them to my clients. I will also do, I use an app called Cubicasa. Mm-hmm. It marks the floor plan. And so I think that's so much easier to look at the floor plan and be like, okay, there's a wall here and a dining room, and you already have another dining room. Let's like add the wall and, square footage makes sense. The flow would still make sense. So that's traditionally what we're doing. In the house that we bought, it was weird. It was like set up as an office. So it didn't have a closet. And it didn't have the 4th wall, but it had like a half wall. So for us, it was super easy to fill in that wall and make a door.
Yeah.
So, and some of those, when the realtors post them, you can't tell the layout, unless they're doing some sort of video. So going and seeing it, I think doing the floor plan is super, super important.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And it's so funny too, because again, if you're not experienced creating new walls or reconfiguring a layout, it can feel like a really big deal. Like it can feel overwhelming. And if you have the right contractor and the right team around you, they're like, oh, that's easy peasy, no problem,
Exactly.
How do you select your contractors? What types of things are you looking for in finding the right folks to help you build out either the outside or the inside of a property?
So, we have a lot of vendors in our area just because I think where we're at, but prior to this, John and I would pretty much do all of our own work. And this last project is the first one that we're like, we just can't do it. We're getting older. I just had back surgery, and so it's like, okay, like we don't have the time to do it. And so just talking to other people, we have a good presence here locally. I run a meetup every month. So we have the connections here. We have a good group of people that manage the co-host. And so just having those connections. And like I said, we kind of just hand those over to you. So they're either going to be somebody that we've personally used or somebody that one of our clients have used.
Yeah. Now talk to me about your meetup, because I love me some community, right?
Yeah.
I think building community is one of the most powerful ways, not only to expand your network and meet new people, but it's one of the most powerful ways to learn, right? Talk to me about what you do inside your meetup. Who typically comes? What topics do you cover?
Yeah. So gosh, we cover everything. So we've covered there's a good core amount of people that live here that manage 20, 30. And so it's a lot of, there's probably 4 or 5 of us that are always there, the same people. And it's been great because we'll share numbers, we'll share contacts, we'll share stories. And it's not just like John and I up there talking. Yes, we come up with what we're going to speak about, but it's open and we're all kind of talking at the same time. We all share experience. This last time we talked about insurance, flood issues, what everybody saw with that. We talked about our backyard a little bit, every month it's something different. We're getting into now bringing other people on. We're either going to have a designer on. Next time we are getting ready to start a virtual meetup because this one is in person, but there's tons of people in our local Facebook group that aren't here locally. So we're gonna, starting in April, start a virtual one for this area.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And to your point, I host remotely. So many people probably have properties down there that live 12, 16 hours away who would love to participate. So I love that you're taking that virtually. I'm curious, are the folks who are attending now, are they typically investors and property managers? Are they only property managers? Are they real estate agents or all of the above?
There's a little bit of all of the above. So there's a real estate agent that comes, another real estate agent that comes. There's people that just do co-hosting. There's people that own and do co-hosting. Yeah, so a pretty good mix. There's been a couple of people that don't own yet, which is super exciting because I actually had a real estate client in town and I invited them and I was kind of nervous about inviting them. And they're like, it was so inspiring. It was so good to hear everyone's story and how great you're doing. They own up north and, their numbers don't look like the numbers here. And so they're going to be doing a 1031 exchange. And so I'm excited because they got to see firsthand and meet people firsthand that they will come to know working in this market.
Right. The reason I wanted to talk about that meetup, which I've just heard about for the first time, is, in my opinion, collaborating with people versus competing with them is so incredibly important. And someone could be listening or watching and thinking, girlfriend is crazy. She's meeting with her competitors and sharing numbers,
And we get that a lot too, because being realtors, we're selling to our competitors and we're teaching them what to do and what we've done. And everyone's like, why are you doing that? And I guess we come from the mindset of, if you guys are going to do better, we're going to do better. If you're gonna make your house mediocre, if you're gonna make your house even decent, and you're charging $300 and we're charging $900 to $1,000, that's not going to work for us. So we want you to do better so that we can all get those higher revenue numbers.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think too, if anyone is ever in trouble, right? If anyone, heaven forbid, something happens to your property and you need to find another place for them to stay. And I've had that happen where I called my folks in my local market who I know well. Hey, do you have any availability for these dates? I have a guest I need to move, where we were fully booked otherwise. So I would encourage anyone to start to build relationships with people in your local market who you might have previously thought as a competitor. They can be a collaborator for sure.
Absolutely. I think that that's a big thing. I mean, our whole business has been built on relationships, going back to the people that we're managing for now. If I wouldn't have kept those relationships and met these people, we wouldn't be in business like we are today. So
I love that. Speaking of business, what does your business look like on the back end? So what I mean by that is it you and John still alone? Do you have help managing the day-to-day? What does that look like?
So we now have 3 VAs, one pretty much full-time and 2 part-time that kind of fill in for when she's off. They're from the Philippines. John is definitely more involved in that aspect. So there's like a meeting with them every morning, and they pretty much handle everything. I mean, John and I are still doing like price labs and that sort of thing, but they're doing a lot of like the client communication. They're reaching out, on those nights, then it's a one-off night that's available. They're reaching out to those people. So, I mean, they do a lot for us. And like I said before, like we did it kind of backwards how we grew. So we didn't have anybody until, we had our properties and we were doing everything ourselves. So that's been a huge help. So we have them on that side, and then we, have the time to focus on the real estate side.
Yeah. And I think that's so incredibly important to, as you do grow, make sure that you are freeing yourself up to focus on what lights you up, right? The things that you enjoy, and also the things that you're good at. Right.
Sure.
And I think one of the biggest challenges that I've seen entrepreneurs make is that they try to do everything themselves. And you get to a point where you're in your own way, right?
Sure.
You're in your own way. So what did it feel like for you when you were able to get other team members in place and allowed you to free yourself up?
Very relieved that, at first I was super hesitant. I feel like that's probably the normal thing going into it. It's like, oh, I don't want to give this up. But, reading books like Who Not How and things like that, are like, okay, we have to get rid of this. And it wasn't until John one day, we have this big whiteboard, and he wrote down everything. And he was like, this is what's on my plate. And this is the things that you're doing. Like, what can we cross through and give to somebody? And I was like, but who are we giving it to? What are we doing? He was like, we'll figure that out. But we need to get these things that don't serve us off of our plates.
Yeah. I love
that. Big. Yeah. So that was
I love that. In fact, right now, on my desk is my time study. So I'm doing a 2-week time study. I'm really weird. I really love doing time studies.
Okay.
But the whole goal is obviously for me and the rest of my team to check in periodically and really have clarity in how we're spending our time, right?
Yeah.
Because I always, again, share this with my peeps, but what gets measured gets improved. And when we're not measuring how we're spending our time, what we're focusing our time on, we can't improve the output, right? We can't be more strategic. So I love that John nudged you.
Yeah, me too. Like I said, him and I will go head to head on things sometimes. And like, we don't need it. And it goes back to that tree. But yeah.
Goes back to the tree. I do want to ask you about working with your husband, because I think that this is also something that is a challenge for so many couples. And I don't mean this in a negative way. I've been married 30 years. I love my husband, right?
Yeah.
And what we have discovered, and he doesn't work with me on a day-to-day basis, but obviously we invest together.
Sure.
And we've discovered some things that we've had to work through as a couple because we're making decisions in a different way. What does that look like for you and your hubby, and how have you navigated that?
Yeah, so I feel like that is something, I feel like we're still navigating that. So we share a big office, a bedroom that we converted to an office. And, our schedules don't align up all the time, but like if we're both in the office, I tend to, like, when I'm working, I talk. Like, I guess I don't know if I talk to myself,
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm like, I'll read something out loud, or I'm trying to listen to something, and, he takes a call and I'm like, I'm listening to something. How can you take a call? But, I think having 2 spaces, and that's what we're going to end up getting to, because like, can you stop talking? Like, can you stop answering the phone? So I'm not fighting. It's just like, it's difficult, and he's like, okay, I'm concentrating this. You need to stop talking. I'm like, I wasn't talking to you. I'm reading something.
Yeah.
It's tough. And it's tough.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. No, and I can imagine if you're in the same office, like the same space.
Yeah, same.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
so that's about to change. We bought another house that we will eventually turn into a short-term rental. We're building it out now. We completely gutted it. So stay tuned for that, but it probably won't be till next year. We're going to move in there for a little bit, and I don't know. We'll see what happens. But yeah, so we'll then have our own space, which will be nice.
So good. All right. I want to move to what I like to call the lightning round. Okay. So I'm going to ask you some questions. I'm going to ask you to answer with the very first thing that comes to mind. First question is, where is your favorite place to vacation?
Oh gosh. So for us, it's so easy to get to the Caribbean because we're in Florida. So any of the islands, but we got married in St. Lucia. I would love to go back there. Yeah. I would love to go back there.
I just went there for the first time.
Okay.
In December. And like, this is how bad I am. But when I go to places that I love, I like just start looking at real estate. Like, what do houses go for here? Because this is gorgeous, you know?
Yeah.
But oh my gosh, absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I think because, they have mountains and greenery, and here you don't have that. And it's, a couple hour flight to get there. And it's just like a whole different scenery. Yeah. It was beautiful. And the people were amazing.
Yeah. What's one place you've never been that you want to visit?
Oh, I really want to go to, there's two of them, Italy and Switzerland.
Okay. Now, if you had to pick one, which would you choose first?
Oh, man. I went to Switzerland. So I always wanted, I've been skydiving before, and I fought that for a long time. I was like, never doing it. And my brother convinced me, like, you're doing it. Okay. So me and my husband and my brother and his wife, we went skydiving, and I loved it. I was like, why didn't I do it sooner? It's story of my life, I feel like. But why didn't I do it sooner? Oh my God. So then I was like in best places to skydive. And I came across all these pictures of Switzerland. So my goal was to somehow go there and skydive. This just helps. But I just had back surgery and found out, I don't think I can ever skydive again. So I'm like, well, I can take a helicopter or do something. I'll make it work.
Wow.
So, yeah. So I think I would have to pick Switzerland.
Okay, Switzerland. There we go.
Have you been?
I have not. I've been to Italy, but I've never been to Switzerland. And I feel like I would want to go there for the chocolate. Not skydiving.
Yeah.
I mean, very important things. Very important things. All right. Next question. What's one thing you know now that you wished you knew when you were starting out in the world of short-term rentals?
I would say don't listen to all of the hoopla. There are going to be people that are going to try to bring you down. I remember when John and I first got into rentals, and there was this, I don't even know how to explain it. There was a real estate investment class that you could take for a meetup, but it was like a lunch, like a buffet lunch thing or whatever. And I would go a couple of times when we owned the long-term rentals, and it was okay. And I remember going, and we had just started the short-term rental, and the guy next to me was like, when I see you back in 1 year, you will not be doing that anymore. You will have converted back to long-term rentals. I was like, if I could find that guy now.
What is his name?
I know. So I don't, there's a lot of negativity. Sometimes it's great, meeting people and reading stuff on Facebook, but at the same time, sometimes you got to just turn it off, because you will see posts that are negative or, that's not going to work, and do it this way. And
yeah. And, we talked about this at the Live Big Beach retreat. I wrote about it in my book, but your energy armor is so important, in my opinion. I consider it like a piece of plexiglass that surrounds me.
Sure.
But it keeps that negativity from actually penetrating. And I think that that's so difficult for people to be around negative folks without letting it affect them. Right?
Sure.
So just, if anybody's watching or listening, next time you're around negative Nelly, just consider that you could have a piece of clear plexiglass around you and don't let that negativity get in. Yeah. So good. All right. Next question. What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
I think being around people that are just positive and build you up, people like Paige and Taylor saying like, yes, Christina, like build this bright green pickleball court, like that, like just not necessarily advice, but like telling you like you are good enough and you can do this.
Amen, sister.
Yeah.
Amen. Last question. What's one thing and or person that you're grateful for today?
Oh gosh, I would say my mom for sure.
Oh, well, tell me about your mama.
Oh gosh, she's in Michigan. So she's a school bus driver, and she comes when school is out. So she gets to come. She usually comes for like a week in March, and then she comes for a couple months or maybe a month in the summer, and then she comes for Christmas. I feel like she's coming more now that I have little John. So he's 4, and they're like best friends. So he'll like call her sometimes, and they'll tell like bedtime stories. It's so freaking cute. So
that's adorable. Yeah. That's adorable. I love that. Mama's, it's interesting. My mom has been gone for 20 years.
Wow.
And still to this day, like the thought of her not only warms my heart, but whenever I'm sick, like as an adult, still to this day, whenever I'm sick, I want my mom.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, if only my mom would be here right now.
Right. I hear you. Yeah. I mean, because, my mom's far away.
Yeah.
But I mean, the relationships that you have with your mom never go away.
They never go away. Yeah. Never go away. I love that. Christina, this has been so fabulous. Thank you so much for being with us. If somebody wants to learn more about you or potentially learn more about the Bradenton market, where's the best place for folks to find you online?
Yeah. So you can look me up on Facebook, Christina McNatt, or you can email me, Christina at the Short Term Shop.
I love it. Thanks so much again.
Perfect. Thank you.
Now, ladies, before you go, I want you to know the journey does not stop here. If you're ready to connect with like-minded women, get expert training, and grow your short-term rental empire, join us inside the STR Sisterhood on Mighty Networks. It's where collaboration meets success. All you have to do is head over to the STR Sisterhood .M as in Mary, N as in Nancy .co and become part of the community today. It's totally free, and I'll see you on the inside.